The warning came before anyone saw him. A low growl rolled out of the holding yard and cut through the morning work. The main gate shivered once, metal on metal, as if something heavy had leaned into it and then stepped back. Mara Dube, the head keeper, checked the latch with her thumb and kept her voice level. "No one crosses the tape," she told the crew. "Call out before you move, keep your hands clear." The volunteers nodded, eyes fixed on the shadowed corner where the lion moved and disappeared again. The sanctuary sat outside a small town on dry ground and scrub. It took animals that other places refused. Staff worked in a narrow service corridor along the enclosures, separated from visitors by a second fence. Distance was the main safety tool. His paperwork called him Unit 12, but staff used the name Samson because it was easier to say into radios. He was an adult male lion, about 5 years old by estimate, thick through the shoulders. He arrived 3 months earlier after local authorities shut down a roadside attraction. The file that came with him was thin, no full medical history, no vaccination record, one line of handling advice: unsafe to handle. During the first week, staff assumed he was reacting to transport and a new space. He ate one day and refused the next. He paced for hours, then collapsed in shade with his mouth open and breathing fast. When a tool clanged, he rushed the gate and hit it with his chest. After that, no one called it adjustment. Mara tightened the routine. Feeding moved earlier to avoid the worst heat. Only 2 staff worked the corridor at a time, with a spotter posted at the corner. Meat trays were pushed through the slot with a pole, hands never near bars. Mara logged every incident in a binder: time, noise, who was present, what Samson did, and how long it took him to settle. The facility director, Evan Pike, read those notes with a pen held between 2 fingers like a tool. Evan did not handle animals. His job was budgets, insurance, and keeping the place open. He met Mara by the service road and stayed behind the tape. "We have a duty to keep people safe," he said. He glanced at the dented gate where Samson had struck it. "If he breaks through, staff get hurt and the sanctuary closes." Mara did not argue about safety. She argued about certainty. "We have not done a full exam," she said. "We don't know what happened to him before he came here." She watched Samson as she spoke, tracking his distance to the gate and the way he kept turning his head. "If pain is driving this, euthanasia would be the wrong decision." Evan's reply was calm but firm. "If he injures someone and we knew he was a risk, we lose everything." A local paper had already used the word dangerous, and the board wanted a decision. Evan drafted 3 options: transfer, long-term isolation, or euthanasia. Transfer required another facility willing to accept an adult male lion with incident reports. None had agreed. A junior keeper, Lena Ortiz, brought Mara a separate sheet of notes. Lena was 24 and new to big cats, but she watched closely and wrote down what she saw. "It's not random," she said. "When he lunges, it's when something moves fast near his left side or when the sun hits the gate and throws glare." She pointed to times she had marked after shifts. "He settles when it's shaded. He startles when the light changes." Mara had noticed similar behavior. Samson often angled his head before moving, as if searching. Still, patterns were not proof. Without sedation, they could not examine eyes, teeth, joints, or blood. Sedation carried risk, and the sanctuary did not have a full clinic. Evan saw every delay as a chance for the next incident. That incident came on a Tuesday before noon. Heat pressed down early and dust hung in the corridor air. Mara and Lena moved a meat tray toward the feeding slot when a visitor on the public path dropped a plastic bottle. It bounced, flashed in the sun, and skittered along the fence line. Samson erupted from shade and slammed the gate hard enough to rattle the padlock. Mara stepped back. Lena, startled, shifted her weight and her radio cord snagged on the mesh, pulling her shoulder close to the fence for a second before Mara yanked the cord free and pulled her back. No one was cut, but everyone saw how little space there had been. Mara pulled Lena behind the tape and kept her there until her breathing slowed. Evan arrived minutes later after the alarm call. He watched Samson pace in a tight loop, then stop with his head turned toward the bright opening of the corridor. Evan did not talk about temperament. He talked about probability and liability. Mara felt the decision narrowing, as if each entry closed another exit. That afternoon, Evan asked Mara for a recommendation. Mara asked for 48 hours to bring in an outside veterinarian with big cat experience to do a field assessment. Evan agreed, but he set the condition in plain terms. "If the vet finds no treatable cause, we act," he said. Mara nodded because she understood what that meant, and because she believed there was still something they had not seen. The veterinarian arrived the next morning, Dr. Priya Nair, carrying a worn case and consent forms. She listened to the incident binder without interrupting and asked to see the enclosure from every angle. When Samson stepped into view, she did not comment on his strength. She watched the way he held his head, the timing of his blinks, and the way he turned toward sound. A beam of light caught his face and Dr. Nair leaned forward, eyes fixed on his eyes, as if the case had just shifted. Dr. Priya Nair began with the enclosure, not the lion. She walked the service corridor with Mara Doob and stopped at each corner where a person would come into view. She pointed to a strip of glare on the mesh and asked when staff worked that side. Mara said it was busiest at feeding and cleanup when tools and bowls were carried. Priya asked for the incident binder. Mara opened it on a cart and read the entries that mattered most. A lunge at the gate after a sudden clang, a strike at the mesh when a keeper stepped out from shadow, a charge after a plastic bottle skittered along the fence. Priya did not ask for labels like aggressive. She asked for positions, angles, and light. Mara drew quick diagrams. Priya circled a repeated detail. The trigger often came from Samson's left. Evan Pike listened and stayed practical. The board meets Friday, he said. They want a decision we can defend. Priya said she understood, but she would not guess. A behavior summary is not a diagnosis, she said. If this is pain or sensory loss, the meaning of your incidents changes. Priya asked how Samson arrived. Evan pulled the intake folder from the office file cabinet. The documents came from a county seizure, a short report, photos, and a transfer form. The report described a fenced lot behind a closed gas station with a hand-painted sign advertising Big Cats. The photos showed a narrow pen made from welded panels and plywood, bare dirt worn into a pacing trench, a water bucket left in full sun, and a feeder door patched with scrap metal. Priya studied the photos and asked who had handled the lion there. Evan said the operator was facing charges and was not cooperating. Mara said a former worker had called once, asking if the lion survived the transfer. Priya told Mara to call him while she stayed by the enclosure and watched. The man's name was Carl Reese. He said he had cleaned pens and hauled meat for 2 months. He did not claim training. He described noise and crowds as routine. Kids banged the fence, he said. Music played all day. Mara asked about injuries. Carl hesitated and then spoke plainly. His left eye looked bad, he said. Sometimes cloudy. He squinted in bright sun. Priya asked if a vet ever treated him. Carl said he never saw one. He described a day when Samson hit the fence hard, then held his head low for the rest of the day, and the owner used a hose to push him away from the feed door. Mara ended the call after getting dates and the location of the lot. She wrote the details down and added them to the binder. Evan asked if that history changed anything about the safety plan. Priya said it changed what they should assume medically. If he has an untreated eye condition, pain will drive behavior, she said. Ignoring that does not reduce risk. Priya kept her distance and watched Samson without provoking him. Samson stayed in shade, head low, ears turning toward every sound. When a volunteer shifted a plastic bucket behind Priya, the scrape on concrete was small, but Samson's body tightened and his head snapped toward it. Priya asked the volunteer to stop moving. The corridor went quiet and Samson's shoulders eased. Priya asked Mara to run one normal feeding pass while she stood in a fixed spot. Mara and Lena Ortiz moved in a steady line and called out their positions, as protocol required. Samson remained still until sun reflected off a metal bowl and flashed across the mesh. He blinked hard and took 2 steps forward, then stopped with one paw lifted. Lena spoke once, using his name as a cue, not comfort. Mara slid the tray through the slot and backed away on the same path. Samson dipped his head and pressed his muzzle against the shade panel, rubbing the left side longer than the right. Priya asked for Samson's condition on intake. Mara showed her the form: dehydrated, thin for his frame, scarring on the nose, dental wear, and a note about eye discharge. Mara said they had focused on quarantine and safe routines because they had no safe way to restrain him for a close exam. Priya did not criticize that choice. She asked what sedation gear and monitoring the sanctuary had. Mara listed a dart rifle, oxygen, basic monitors, and emergency drugs. Evan added that their budget did not allow a specialist consult unless there was a clear reason to request one. Priya answered him directly. The clear reason is that your incident pattern points to a sensory problem, she said. Evan asked what she suspected. Priya did not dramatize it. Impaired vision, she said. Possibly painful eye disease, worse on the left, that can turn routine movement into a threat. Mara asked whether treatment could change behavior. Priya said, if pain is reduced and the environment is predictable, yes. If pressure or inflammation is advanced, it may be harder. She asked Mara for the schedule of loud maintenance, visitor peak times, and any changes in Samson's feeding pattern. Mara gave the times and noted that refusals clustered after the brightest midday hours. Evan asked about risk during sedation. Priya said Big Cat anesthesia always carried risk, but unmanaged risk was already happening in the corridor. She explained what she needed: a quiet day, limited staff movement, a safe shot line, and a full eye exam once Samson was down. She listed the steps in plain terms: Check corneas for scarring or ulcers, test pupil responses, measure eye pressure, look for inflammation, and take blood for basic infection markers. She said she had a portable tonometer, an exam light, fluorescein strips, and reversal drugs, but she needed extra hands for monitoring. Mara asked if Priya had seen anything in Samson's eyes already. Priya said she had seen an uneven reflection when light hit his face that morning, and she had seen him avoid glare as if it caused pain. Evan looked at the dented gate and then at the binder. If the exam shows no treatable cause, the board will vote to euthanize, he said. Priya replied, then we either find the cause or we stop pretending we have looked. Mara said we do the exam and we let facts decide. Priya asked Evan to sign consent for diagnostic sedation. He hesitated, then signed and told Mara to schedule it for the next morning. He said he would warn the board chair that the vote might hinge on the results. As they finished, Samson stepped from shade into the open and faced the barrier. He did not charge. He held still, head angled slightly left, as if placing them by sound and scent rather than sight. Priya watched him and said to Mara, quietly enough that Evan had to lean in to hear, if I'm right, his aggression is defensive behavior from pain and surprise. Evan did not answer, but he did not revoke consent. By this time tomorrow, they would either have a medical explanation that changed the plan, or the board's deadline would become final. The next morning, Mara closed the sanctuary to visitors before sunrise. Evan posted a notice at the front gate and rerouted deliveries to the back road. He wanted no crowd noise and no chance that a stranger would startle the lion at the fence. Lena checked radios, laid out gloves, and taped a sign on the corridor door, no entry without Mara. What? Dr. Priya Nair set her case on a steel table and assigned tasks in short sentences. Mara would control doors and call distances. Lena would record every reading. Priya would place the dart and do the exam. Evan stayed behind the tape and watched, face set as if he could keep the situation contained by not moving. Samson held to the shade at the back of the yard. He faced the corridor, but his head remained angled, listening more than watching. Mara gave the same cue she used at feeding. Mara at the gate, she said. Samson did not step forward. Priya waited for a clear line to the shoulder. She fired once. The dart struck and fell away. Samson spun, ran a few steps, and stopped. His tail lashed and he huffed through his nose. Mara and Lena stayed still. Priya started the timer and watched for the first signs of sedation. Samson's head dipped, rose, and dipped again. He tried to walk, corrected as if the ground shifted, then sat. Minutes later, he lay down with heavy breathing. On Priya's signal, Mara opened the inner gate. They approached in a straight line and stopped at the same marks on the ground. Priya checked depth with a pole touch and then with jaw tone. When she was satisfied, she covered Samson's eyes with a cloth to reduce light reflex. Lena called out respiration and pulse. Mara wrote them down. Priya began with the left eye. The cornea was hazy, not clear. The pupil response to light was poor. She applied fluorescein dye and saw a patch that held stain, consistent with a chronic corneal injury. She measured intraocular pressure with a handheld tonometer and repeated the reading until it was consistent. The numbers were high. She examined the right eye. It was clearer than the left, but the pupil response was slow and the pressure was also elevated. Priya sat back and spoke in plain terms. This is glaucoma and it is advanced on the left, she said. He is in pain and his vision is reduced. Evan asked, how sure are you? Priya pointed to the pressure readings, the abnormal pupil response, and the corneal stain. These findings fit, she said, and the pattern you described fits. Mara did not speak, but her posture changed as if a locked question had finally opened. Lena kept writing, but her hand tightened on the pen. Priya explained what the condition meant for behavior. Pressure inside the eye damages nerves and causes constant ache with sharper spikes. Bright light can hurt and glare can feel sudden and threatening. With reduced vision, a fast movement can appear late, especially from the side of the worse eye. When something arrives without warning, he reacts to create distance, Priya said. That looks like aggression, but it is defensive behavior driven by pain and surprise. Mara asked why the incidents clustered at certain times. Priya answered with the triggers in the binder. Midday light, reflections, quick movement near his left side, she said. Noise adds to it. Evan said the bottle, the metal bowl, the maintenance work. Priya nodded. You have been asking him to tolerate conditions that hurt him, she said. Priya drew blood for basic screening and checked hydration. She did not find anything else that explained the scale of the reactions as clearly as the eye findings. Mara asked the question Evan had been avoiding. Can we treat it? Priya gave a direct answer. We can lower pressure and reduce pain with daily medication, she said. But advanced glaucoma can keep worsening. Without control, he can lose more vision. Evan asked about surgery. Priya listed options without promising an outcome, pressure-lowering procedures, and if pain could not be controlled, removal of the most damaged eye as a last resort. A specialist would decide, she said. What matters now is that euthanasia is not the only reasonable response. Mara asked what changes should start today. Priya gave a short plan: voice cues before any approach, predictable routes, shade cloth to reduce glare, fewer reflective objects, and no sudden entries from Samson's left. Assume he cannot see you well from that side, she said. If you reduce surprise, you reduce risk. Evan asked, does this make staff safer? Priya did not soften the answer. It makes safety manageable, she said. You still need barriers and discipline, but if you treat pain and remove triggers, his reactions can decrease. Evan said the board will ask whether this changes our liability. Priya replied, a documented diagnosis and a mitigation plan are stronger than a label. Mara watched Samson breathe under the cloth and said, we have been judging him for something his body has been doing to him. Elena said he was warning us. Evan looked from the dented gate to Priya's notes. What do you recommend, he asked, if we want to give him a chance and keep people safe? Priya said start medication immediately and refer him for urgent specialty care within a week. Evan asked the cost. Priya gave a range. Evan's expression tightened, but he did not argue with the diagnosis. If we wait, Priya added, we lose time and he loses vision. Evan said the sanctuary's reserve could cover only a few days of medication, not specialist imaging or surgery. He mentioned the insurance renewal and the local paper calling Samson a man-eater. Mara said she would contact partner zoos and start an emergency appeal. Priya said the medical notes must be complete before Friday morning. They reversed anesthesia and stepped back to the corridor marks. Samson's ears twitched first. He lifted his head slowly, blinking hard as if light stung. He stood unsteady for a moment, then moved to shade and lay down again. He did not charge the gate. He did not pace. He stayed still, listening. Evan called the board chair from the office and spoke in short phrases. Mara heard glaucoma, pain-driven behavior, and urgent referral. When he ended the call, he returned to the corridor and faced Mara. The vote is still Friday, he said. They want a plan and a price. If we cannot pay for the specialist, they will call this untreatable. Evan called an emergency meeting that afternoon. He brought the board chair in by video and placed Dr. Priya Nair's exam notes on the table. Mara Dube sat with her hands flat, focused on facts. Lena Ortiz stood behind her with the incident binder open. The chair asked one question first. If we do nothing, what happens? Priya answered through the speaker. The pressure will keep damaging the optic nerve, she said. Pain continues, vision likely worsens, defensive reactions become more frequent. Evan translated it into policy terms. Risk goes up, he said. The chair asked about cost and timeline. Evan listed the eye drops, pain medication, and the nearest specialist clinic. The sanctuary could cover 2 weeks of medication, but not the specialist deposit. We need outside support, Evan said. Without it, we end up at euthanasia. Mara described the safety plan as steps, not hope. We add shade panels to reduce glare, she said. We remove reflective bowls. We announce every approach. We change corridor flow so no one appears on his left without warning. The chair asked if that could fail. Mara did not argue. Any plan can fail, she said. But this plan is based on a diagnosis, not a guess. The chair set a condition. 72 hours, she said. Bring me funding or a partner commitment for specialty care. If not, the vote stands. Evan accepted because there was no other path. When the call ended, he stared at the calendar on the wall and did not speak for a full minute. Mara started calling contacts. She did not ask for transfer. She asked for names of ophthalmologists who had worked with wildlife and for advice on managing glaucoma in a big cat. Some facilities refused as soon as she described an adult male lion with incident reports. Mara asked for one thing before hanging up, a referral name. She wrote down each one and handed the list to Evan. Lena rewrote the incident summary with only observable details: date, time, location, trigger, Samson's response, and recovery time. She marked repeated features in bold on her printout: glare, sudden movement, and left side approach. She taped the summary to the staff wall so everyone would follow the same rules. That night, Mara slept on a cot in the staff room. At 2 a.m., she walked the corridor with her flashlight pointed down. Samson was awake in the shade. When he heard her steps, he rose, then froze. Mara spoke once, the same cue she used during feeding. Samson stopped moving and settled back down. Mara wrote, voice cue reduces startle, and she underlined it. By the second day, the medication showed small changes. Samson still avoided bright areas, but he no longer struck the gate when tools scraped. Staff hung canvas panels where sunlight hit the mesh. Evan approved the purchase without debate. If this buys stability, we buy it, he said. Hope did not remove danger. On the third morning, a delivery truck backed near the service road by mistake. The reverse alarm beeped and echoed down the corridor. Samson surged forward and stopped at the gate line, head whipping as if trying to locate the sound. Lena saw him angle left, then blink hard. Mara stepped into position at the marked distance and used the cue twice. She did not advance. After several seconds, Samson backed away and returned to shade, breathing fast but not charging. Evan used that incident to push urgency. He called the board chair and said, "Medication helps, but we are one mistake away from another close call." The chair reminded him of the deadline and asked if he had a clinic appointment. He did not yet, and he heard the impatience in her silence. Mara reached a veterinary ophthalmology clinic in the city and spoke to a coordinator. She gave weight estimate, sedation protocol, and Priya's findings: high eye pressure, poor pupil response, corneal staining. Priya joined the call and confirmed the data. The clinic offered an appointment in 5 days and required a deposit to hold the slot. Evan wrote the deposit amount on a notepad and did not hide his reaction. "If we spend this and lose him, we take the hit," he said. Mara answered, "If we don't spend it, we choose euthanasia because we can't pay." Evan told her to raise funds with plain facts and clear numbers. Mara agreed. Lena recorded a short clip from a safe distance: shade panels installed, corridor markings, and Samson lying quietly. She did not zoom in on his face. She stated the diagnosis, the risk of untreated glaucoma, and the exact deposit needed for the specialist. Evan posted it with the sanctuary statement and kept comments open. Donations came slowly at first. Some people questioned why the sanctuary had taken the lion at all. Evan deleted threats and kept the post focused on the medical findings. He also called the insurance agent and disclosed the diagnosis and the new protocols because he needed proof that risk was being managed. On Thursday, Priya returned to assess response to treatment. A full pressure measurement required sedation and specialist tools, but she could evaluate comfort by behavior. Samson stayed in shade and watched movement less sharply than before. He still blinked hard when light shifted. Priya told Evan he needs specialist measurement and likely a procedure if we can't control pressure. Evan said, "The board will ask if we can sustain it." Priya replied, "Then give them the facts and let them choose whether they end a treatable patient or commit to long-term care." Near midday, a regional wildlife nonprofit called Evan after seeing the post. They asked for Priya's written diagnosis and Lena's incident log. Evan emailed both within an hour. The nonprofit offered to cover the specialist deposit if the sanctuary agreed to share follow-up outcomes and adopt a formal protocol, medical screening before labeling any animal aggressive. Evan agreed without bargaining. Evan called the board chair and delivered the update in one sentence. "We have the deposit," he said. The chair asked for proof. He forwarded the confirmation and the appointment time. She said the euthanasia vote would be paused until the specialist's findings, but she warned that if the case became unaffordable, the decision would return. Friday morning became transport planning instead of a vote. Mara and Priya reviewed crate steps and emergency procedures. Lena cleared the corridor and practiced the voice cue with every staff member who might pass the enclosure. Evan arranged a quiet route and carried the documents, because paperwork was now part of keeping Samson alive. When Samson entered the crate under sedation, the process was controlled, but no one relaxed. Mara watched his breathing and kept one hand on the crate frame to feel vibration changes. Evan stood back and listened to the steady oxygen flow, counting seconds between chest movements. If the specialist recommended surgery, Evan would have to return to the board with a larger number and no guarantee. Mara knew the pause could end as fast as it began. Evan had already drafted 2 budgets on his desk, one for treatment and one for euthanasia, and both had dates.